Tonight we are looking at 3 horrifying caving stories that went horribly wrong. Every rope out of the coldest cave on Earth freezes to glass overnight, with 4 climbers still at the bottom. A guide falls on the razor floor of the longest lava tube on Earth, alone, 2 kilometers from the sky. And a regulator dies at 40 meters in the deepest blue hole on Earth, with a full tank sealed uselessly behind it. Each story starts with confidence and ends in chaos. As always, viewer discretion is advised. On August 9th, 2026, Marcus Hale climbed through a window in a cliff face in Uzbekistan into air cold enough to bite, into Dark Star, the coldest cave on Earth, a system of frozen galleries buried in a desert mountain where the ice at the bottom has not melted in 10,000 years. His team had 8 days inside, pushed the survey past the frozen lake at the bottom, and climbed the fixed lines home. Marcus was 45 years old, an ice specialist who had logged 20 expeditions in the world's frozen caves, the man teams hired when the route itself was made of winter. His ritual never varied. Every night he ran the day's ropes through his fist, meter by meter, feeling for the glaze, because ice, he liked to say, does its best work while you sleep. The plan for day 6 was the long climb out from the deep camp, 400 meters of fixed rope in 8 degrees below zero. Here is what you need to understand about a cave made of winter. Water still moves through it, one warm afternoon at a time. Meltwater trickles down the walls by day, finds the ropes, and soaks the sheaths. Then the night cold sets it, and a soft rope becomes a rod of glass, and ascenders, which live by biting the sheath, cannot bite glass. The rule is old and absolute. An iced rope is not a rope, it is scenery. The first 5 days ran like a textbook. The team moved down through blue galleries and frozen halls, boots scraping on ancient ice, breath clicking into frost on their hoods, the survey growing by hundreds of meters a day. The deep camp sat warm enough at the frozen lake, and every night Marcus ran his fist down the day's ropes. On the 5th evening, a warm front crossed the mountain far above, and the walls of Dark Star wept for 6 hours. On the 6th morning, that is when the cave showed its overnight work, the first pitch out of camp hanging stiff as a curtain rod, and the sheath under his fist was not rope anymore, because the weep had frozen at midnight, and the climb home had already failed. 400 meters of fixed line, and every meter of it glazed. What he didn't know, standing at the anchor with his useless ascenders, the warm front above had stalled, and the weep would return every afternoon. And that habit would now become the expedition's entire exit strategy, the nightly fist down the rope, one scraped meter at a time. The ascenders skated off the glaze and held nothing. Twice, 3 times. They were stuck. 4 necks felt it. Panic breathed there quietly, and nobody let it in. Because this is the arithmetic of an iced rope. The anchors still held, the rope still hung, and none of it could be climbed. A ladder with the rungs painted on. 4 people, 1 stove, 3 days of fuel, and 8 degrees below zero doing quiet work on all of it. Watch the ledger Marcus built at the anchor. 3 days of fuel, cut to a 5-hour burn ration by decree. A surface team due to worry in 2 days and reach them in 4. And 400 meters of glass rope between the camp and the sky, in a cave that refroze its own repairs every night. He ran it like the specialist he was, climbing shifts in the warm hours only, 2 on the rope, 2 at the stove, and the rope de-iced by hand. The sheath flexed and scraped over a carabiner's spine, meter by meter, until the glaze cracked off in bright rings. Put yourself on that pitch for 1 hour of it, your breath freezing to your hood, your fingers flexing a rope that rings like porcelain, and 40 meters of progress a day, bought 1 cracked ring of ice at a time. At 1 day they had cleared 90 meters and slept badly. At 2 days the afternoon weep returned and took 30 meters back. At 3 days Marcus changed the shifts to chase the freeze, scraping at night, sleeping at noon, working with the cave's clock instead of against it. The last pitch went in a snow-lit dusk on the 5th day of the climb, fingers wooden, fuel gone since morning, the window in the cliff face burning gold above them like a door left open. Marcus came through the window last, into desert air that felt tropical at 4 degrees, and found the surface team's tents already pitched on the ledge. Worry had arrived on schedule, and so, by one evening, had everyone else. He shook out his climbing fist in the firelight, the one that had read the ropes every night for 20 years, and admitted it had never once read them wrong. The cave had simply written faster. All 4 survived, and the expedition report ruled the escape a benchmark in ice cave ropecraft and printed the numbers that made it 400 meters de-iced by hand, 5 days, 40 meters a day, 0 falls. The coldest cave on Earth still weeps every warm afternoon and sets its work every night. And the fixed ropes now come out of Darkstar between seasons. No line winters over, and no rope is trusted until a fist has failed to find glaze on it. Marcus still runs his fist down every rope every night in every frozen cave that hires him. And the young ones do not ask why anymore. Ice does its best work while you sleep, he tells them at the stove. Read the ropes before bed, and when the cave writes faster than you read, stop climbing and start scraping. On May 12, 2026, Keala Eng dropped through a skylight in a Hawaiian rainforest into the warm dark of Kazumura, the longest lava tube on Earth, 65 kilometers of black glass tunnel running down the flank of a volcano like a drowned highway. She went in alone on a Tuesday, as she did most weeks, to check the route she guided. 3 hours down the tube, out through the far skylight, home by 2. Keala was 34 years old, a caving guide who had logged 9 years in the tube systems of the Big Island, raised on the cave by a grandfather who called it the volcano's vein. Her clients knew her for one speech at every skylight, a lava shard held up. This floor is younger than your grandparents', and it has not been sanded yet. Her solo kit never varied. 2 lamps, a first aid roll her friends called Paranoid, and a checkout text to her sister, out by 2, or start calling. Here is what you need to understand about a lava tube. It is not carved, it is poured. The rock is volcanic glass in places, frozen mid-flow, and where the ceiling once dripped fire, the floor now grows blades. In a limestone cave, a fall is a bruise. In Kazumura, a fall is a cut, and the nearest hospital does not know where the skylights are. The route ran its familiar music for the first hour, the tube arching overhead in ropes of frozen stone, her lamp finding the silver skins of old flows, roots hanging through cracks like chandeliers. She moved easily, boots crunching on cinder, greeting the cave's landmarks like neighbors. Past the second skylight, the floor changed to the stretch she always warned her clients about, a field of collapsed ceiling plates, tilted and glass-edged. In the plate field, that is where the cave collected its toll, a slab the size of a table tipping under her boot, slow and certain, because a plate that is balanced for 40 years owes nothing to the 41st, and her footing had already failed. She went down hands first onto the edge of the next plate, and the glass did what glass does. What she didn't know, in the first white second before the pain arrived, the edge had opened her left shin to the bone, and that habit would now decide whether she walked out of the volcano's vein or stayed in it. The paranoid first aid roll her friends laughed at. The pain arrived all at once, in a white wave that emptied her lungs. Her lamp found the wound. It was deep and wrong. Panic reached for her breathing. She reached for the roll. Because this is the solo caver's oldest exam, and it has one question. How much of your rescue can you do yourself, with what you carried in? 1 working leg. 2 kilometers back to the nearest usable skylight. 5 hours until anyone starts calling. Watch the ledger she built on the plate field. Pressure bandage first, wrapped hard, timed by her watch. 8 minutes from cut to closed. The checkout text unsendable under 60 meters of rock. and a choice with no third option. Back the way she came, 1 skylight and 1 kilometer, or forward through the plates to the far exit and the road. She chose backward, and she chose to crawl, because a hop across tilted glass is how 1 wound becomes 3, and the plates that cut her had at least already introduced themselves. Put yourself on that floor for 1 hour of it, your palms reading every edge before your weight follows, your own blood ticking its slow clock inside the bandage, and your lamp swinging shadows across a floor that has already proven what it does. At 1 hour, she cleared the plate field and drank, hands shaking. At 2 hours, she passed the landmark she called the organ pipes, crawling the smooth stretches, hopping the short ones on 1 leg and her grandfather's stubbornness. The bandage held to the base of the skylight and no farther. She felt the warmth come through the wrap as she looked up the root-hung shaft at 30 meters of green daylight she could not climb. So she did the last correct thing on the list, sat against the wall below the opening, rewrapped the leg over the first bandage, and cut her spare shirt for the tail of it. Then she began to shout on a count. 10 breaths of rest, 1 long call up the shaft. A pig hunter heard the 9th call through the rainforest at 1:30 and looked down a hole in the ground he had walked past his whole life into a headlamp and a calm, hoarse voice asking him to please phone 2 numbers. Her sister's first. The fire crew rigged the skylight within the hour and brought her up through the roots into the rain. 3 hours and 40 minutes after the plate tipped. 20 minutes before her sister's phone would have started the search from cold. She survived on a bandage and a doctrine, and the rescue report ruled the self-extraction textbook and printed its numbers for every guide service on the island. 8 minutes to pressure, 2 kilometers crawled, 0 further wounds. The paranoid roll had paid for itself in 1 afternoon, and the floor had done its worst and still failed to keep her. The longest lava tube on Earth still grows blades in the dark, and Kayala still guides it, on a healed leg, with a kit twice the size, and a new line in the skylight speech that her clients think is a joke until they see her shin. The floor is younger than your grandparents, she tells them, holding up the shard. It has not been sanded yet. Carry your own rescue. The volcano is not carrying one for you. On April 4th, 2026, Yolanda Reyes stepped off a warm white beach in the Bahamas and sank into the deepest blue hole on Earth, Dean's. 200 meters of dark blue shaft opening straight out of a knee-deep turquoise bay, a pit in the seafloor you can walk to. She was diving the wall to 40 meters with one client, a routine she had run some 400 times. Down the rim, along the shadow line, back up into the sun. Yolanda was 48 years old, a dive instructor who had logged 3,000 dives across 20 Caribbean years, the veteran other instructors sent their hardest students to. Her one law was about machines. Her regulators went to service every 100 dives, logged in a notebook. That morning, her set was at the shop, and the rental locker's gear wore no notebook at all. The plan was simple, and she briefed it on the sand. 40 minutes in the water, 200 bar each, 40 meters max, turn at 120, hands off the dark. Here is what you need to understand about Dean's. It is a cathedral stood on its head. The turquoise bay simply stops, and a blue-black column drops 200 meters inside a bell of stone, so deep that freedivers cross oceans just to fall down it on one breath. And every scuba diver in that column lives by one small machine, the regulator, a fist of brass and rubber that turns tank pressure into breath. When it works, nobody thinks about it. That is the whole danger of it. The dive opened like the postcard the island prints. The white rim, the sudden blue, a ring of sunlight shrinking above them as they slid down the wall. At 30 meters, the water went cool and quiet, and the shaft below them faded from blue to a soft black that had no bottom in it. At 40 meters, she leveled the client off on the wall, on schedule, 160 bar showing on both gauges. On the third breath at depth, that is when the rental showed its history. A wet, metallic rattle through the second stage, and the breath arriving thin, because an unserviced first stage cannot carry 4 atmospheres of honest work. The dive had already quietly failed. She signaled the client up ahead of her, unhurried, textbook, one hand already lifting her alternate. What she didn't know, purging the backup mouthpiece. Both stages hung off the same dying first stage. And that choice would now play itself out at 40 meters, the locker instead of the notebook, in the one place on the island with no surface nearby. The rattle became a hiss and quit. The backup gave one thin breath. The machine had failed whole. Panic knocked once. Training answered the door. Because this is the cruelty of a first stage failure. 160 bar sat on her back, whole and useless. A full pantry behind a jammed door. And the nearest working regulator was rising away from her with her client. 40 meters of water column, one breath in her chest. A choice per second, and no seconds spare. Watch the ledger in the blue. A controlled emergency ascent, exhaling a thread, riding her own bubbles, costs roughly 1 minute she might survive. A sprint for the client's alternate, 15 meters above and climbing, costs a chase. And below her, patient as arithmetic, 200 meters of dark that punishes every wrong answer the same way. She did what 3,000 dives had built her to do. Dumped a fist of lead, tipped her chin to the light, and rose exhaling that long silver thread, kicking smooth, eyes on the shrinking shape of her client above. Put yourself inside that 1 minute of it. Your lungs emptying by design and pleading by instinct. The ring of sunlight 40 meters up, wide as a coin. And every rule you ever taught now grading you on the way past. At 30 meters, the thread of bubbles ran thin, and her vision began to spot at the edges. At 20, she was still rising clean, one arm up. At 15, 10 meters short of her client's fins, the last of the breath ran out, and the ocean, which had been keeping score, called the loan. The client felt the tug on his fin at the safety stop and turned into open water, and saw her below him, arm still raised, no bubbles rising, sinking slow against the sunlit rim of the deepest blue hole on Earth. He did everything she had ever taught him, dropped, hooked her harness, flared both jackets, and flew them up the last 15 meters into the bay, screaming for the beach before his own mask was off. Yolanda Reyes died in knee-deep turquoise water, 30 steps from dry sand, with 160 bar still sealed on her back. The drowning had happened at 15 meters. The machine that caused it had failed at 40, and the decision that mattered had been made on a sunny beach, at a rental locker, before her fins were wet. The inquest ruled the death equipment failure aggravated by a corroded, out-of-service first stage, and its verdict is now taped inside the island's rental lockers, word for word. A regulator is not gear. It is the diver's next breath. No service log, no dive. Her students scattered her ashes over the blue after the funeral, on a flat, calm morning, 2-minute swim from the beach, and her service notebook sits under glass at the dive shop, the last entry 91 dives old. All 200 meters of the deepest blue hole on Earth still open out of that turquoise bay like a held breath, and the freedivers still fall down it every season. The machine between you and the water is the dive, her notebook's cover reads now, in her own handwriting. Trust the ones with a history. Walk away from the ones without, even on the prettiest beach in the world. A machine with no history has already failed. It simply has not told anyone yet. That is the whole verdict.